Captain Maya Rodriguez had been flying military aircraft for 12 years, but nothing had prepared her for the humiliation she faced at Nellis Air Force Base. As one of only 3 female pilots in her squadron, she'd grown accustomed to proving herself repeatedly. But Colonel Harrison's treatment had crossed every line of professionalism. During the morning briefing, he'd announced that the upcoming red flag exercise would be men only, because combat situations required real pilots, not diversity hires. The room fell silent as every eye turned to Maya, her face burning with embarrassment and rage. The red flag exercise was the pinnacle of tactical training, bringing together the world's best military pilots to engage in complex aerial combat scenarios. Maya had earned her spot through exceptional performance, graduating top of her class from the Air Force Academy and maintaining a perfect safety record throughout her career. She'd flown missions over Afghanistan and Iraq, earning commendations for bravery and tactical excellence. Yet here she sat, being dismissed by a man who hadn't seen combat in over a decade. After the briefing, Maya stormed to her quarters, her hands shaking with fury. She'd filed complaints before about Harrison's discriminatory behavior, but they'd been buried in bureaucracy. The old boys' network protected their own, and a female pilot's grievances were treated as oversensitive complaints rather than legitimate concerns about leadership failure. Her fellow pilots offered sympathetic looks but remained silent, unwilling to risk their own careers by speaking out against a superior officer. That evening, Maya sat in the officers' club, nursing a beer and watching the news coverage of the red flag exercise preparations. The reporter interviewed several pilots, including Colonel Harrison, who boasted about the elite male warriors who would be participating. Maya's stomach churned as she realized her exclusion was being broadcast to the entire nation. Her phone buzzed with messages from her family, asking why she wasn't mentioned in the coverage. The next morning brought fresh humiliation. During the pre-flight inspection, Maya discovered that her assigned F-16 had been reassigned to Lieutenant Thompson, a recent graduate with barely 6 months of experience. When she confronted the flight chief, he shrugged apologetically and explained that Colonel Harrison had personally ordered the change. Maya was now relegated to ground duties, essentially serving as a glorified mechanic, while her male colleagues prepared for the most prestigious training exercise in military aviation. As she watched the pilots taxi their aircraft toward the runway, Maya felt something snap inside her. She'd spent years playing by the rules, following proper channels, and accepting subtle discrimination with professional grace. But this public humiliation was the final straw. If Colonel Harrison wanted to exclude her from official exercises, she'd find another way to prove her worth. The red flag exercise would continue for 2 weeks, and Maya intended to make every single day count. That night, she began planning her revenge. knowing that sometimes the most effective justice comes from unexpected directions. Maya spent the next 3 days meticulously studying the red flag, exercise schedule, flight patterns, and communication protocols. Her position in ground operations gave her access to detailed mission briefings and real-time radar information that most pilots never saw. She learned that the exercise followed predictable patterns, with foreign aggressor aircraft challenging incoming formations at specific coordinates. The enemy pilots were actually skilled American aviators flying aircraft painted in foreign colors, creating realistic combat scenarios for training purposes. During her off-duty hours, Maya visited the base's maintenance hangars, where she'd built relationships with the ground crew over the years. Chief Master Sergeant Rodriguez, no relation despite the shared surname, had always respected her mechanical knowledge and piloting skills. When Maya explained her situation, his weathered face darkened with anger. He'd seen too many good pilots undermined by prejudiced leadership, and he was ready to help however possible. "You know," Chief Rodriguez said quietly, "there's that old F-16 in Hangar 7. Been marked for retirement, but she's still airworthy. Just needs someone qualified to run a final systems check." He handed Maya a clipboard with maintenance forms. "Might take a few days to complete all the paperwork properly." Maya understood the implication immediately. The aircraft would be available for testing purposes while the official exercise continued. The next morning, Maya arrived at Hangar 7 before dawn. The F-16 was a veteran aircraft, bearing the scars of countless training missions and overseas deployments. Its paint was faded, and several panels showed signs of repair, but the engines were sound and the avionics fully functional. Most importantly, it lacked the bright identification markings of the current squadron aircraft. With some creative paint work, it could easily be mistaken for an aggressor aircraft. Maya spent the following 2 days working with the maintenance crew to prepare her unofficial mount. They painted the aircraft in the standard aggressor scheme, complete with foreign markings and a distinctive red stripe across the canopy that identified it as a high-priority target. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been excluded from the exercise but would now participate as the primary adversary. Chief Rodriguez provided Maya with encrypted radio frequencies used by the aggressor squadrons, along with detailed intelligence about the exercise scenarios. She learned that the participating pilots expected to face predictable opposition following standard engagement protocols. None of them anticipated encountering a pilot who knew their tactics intimately and had access to their communications. The night before her first unauthorized mission, Maya lay in her bunk staring at the ceiling, her heart pounding with anticipation and fear. She was about to commit a serious breach of protocol that could end her career and possibly result in court-martial. But Colonel Harrison's discrimination had pushed her beyond caring about regulations. Tomorrow, she would show everyone exactly what this diversity hire could accomplish when given the opportunity. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister congratulating her on the upcoming exercise, unaware that Maya had been excluded. Maya smiled grimly and typed back, "Thanks. Tomorrow should be interesting." At 500 hours, Maya slipped into Hangar 7 wearing her flight suit and carrying her helmet. The maintenance crew had already prepped the aircraft and cleared it for takeoff. Chief Rodriguez handed her the final paperwork with a conspiratorial wink. "Give them hell, Captain," he whispered. Maya climbed into the cockpit, feeling the familiar comfort of the pilot's seat. As she ran through her pre-flight checklist, she could hear the official exercise aircraft starting their engines in the distance. The tower cleared her for takeoff under the designation Aggressor 7, and Maya taxied onto the runway. Her heart raced as she pushed the throttles forward, feeling the powerful engine thrust her down the tarmac. As the aircraft lifted off, she banked toward the exercise area, knowing that in 30 minutes she would encounter her first targets. Her own squadron mates flying under Colonel Harrison's command. The morning sun painted the Nevada desert in golden hues as Maya climbed to altitude. Her radio crackled with exercise communications as the official participants began their training scenarios. She recognized the voices of her colleagues, including Lieutenant Thompson flying the aircraft that should have been hers. Maya felt a surge of determination as she armed her training weapons systems and prepared to engage. Through her headset, she heard Colonel Harrison's voice coordinating the exercise from the command center. He was praising the exceptional male pilots and their natural combat instincts. Maya gritted her teeth and adjusted her course toward the first intercept point. Today, she would demonstrate exactly what natural combat instincts looked like. Maya's first engagement came at 6:30 hours, when she spotted a formation of 4 F-16s approaching from the southeast. According to the exercise parameters, she was authorized to engage any aircraft entering the designated combat zone. The pilots below had no idea they were about to face someone who knew their individual flying styles, tactical preferences, and communication patterns better than they knew themselves. She dove from 30,000 feet, using the sun's glare to mask her approach. The lead pilot, Major Davidson, was known for his aggressive tactics and tendency to break left under pressure. Maya had flown countless training missions with him and knew exactly how he'd react to a high-speed attack from above. She locked onto his aircraft with her training radar and simulated a missile launch, scoring a direct hit before he even realized he was under attack. The second pilot, Captain Miller, reacted exactly as Maya expected, pulling into a climbing turn while calling for support. Maya followed his movement perfectly, staying in his blind spot and scoring another simulated kill. The remaining 2 pilots scattered, but Maya had studied their patterns for months. She systematically eliminated each one, demonstrating tactical superiority that left the ground controllers speechless. Aggressor 7, identify yourself, came the sharp command from the control tower. Maya smiled and responded in a disguised voice. Aggressor 7, operating under standard exercise protocols. She knew the controllers would check their records and find legitimate paperwork authorizing her presence, thanks to Chief Rodriguez's careful documentation. Word of the mysterious aggressor pilot spread quickly through the exercise communication networks. Pilots who considered themselves elite were being systematically outmaneuvered by an unknown adversary who seemed to anticipate their every move. Colonel Harrison's voice grew increasingly frustrated as he demanded to know who was flying Aggressor 7 and why they hadn't been briefed on this pilot's participation. Maya's second engagement occurred an hour later, when she encountered Lieutenant Thompson flying her original aircraft. The irony was delicious as she stalked the inexperienced pilot, demonstrating the difference between 6 months of training and 12 years of combat experience. Thompson never saw her coming, and Maya's simulated missile strike would have been instantly fatal in actual combat. As news of the mysterious aggressor pilot spread throughout the base, Maya felt a growing sense of satisfaction. She was proving her worth in the most public way possible, humiliating the very pilots who had accepted her exclusion without protest. Each successful engagement was a direct refutation of Colonel Harrison's discriminatory policies and a demonstration of her superior skills. The exercise continued for 4 more hours, with Maya systematically eliminating every pilot who entered her designated area. Her tactical brilliance and intimate knowledge of American fighter tactics made her virtually unstoppable. She was the ghost in the machine, the enemy within, proving that exclusion based on gender was not only morally wrong but tactically stupid. By noon, the exercise had been temporarily suspended, while commanders tried to identify the pilot who was making their best aviators look like amateurs. Maya landed at a remote airstrip, refueled, and prepared for the afternoon session, knowing that her actions were creating exactly the kind of controversy she'd hoped to achieve. The afternoon session brought Maya face to face with her ultimate target, Colonel Harrison himself. The arrogant commander had decided to personally investigate the mysterious aggressor pilot, taking to the skis in his own F-16 to restore order to the exercise. Maya watched from 20,000 feet as Harrison's aircraft approached, feeling a mixture of anticipation and poetic justice. Harrison flew with the overconfidence of a pilot who hadn't faced real opposition in years. His tactics were textbook perfect but predictable, exactly what Maya expected from someone who prioritized regulations over innovation. She allowed him to detect her presence, drawing him into a dogfight that would demonstrate the difference between theoretical knowledge and practical experience. The engagement lasted 15 minutes, with Maya systematically dismantling Harrison's defenses while maintaining perfect radio discipline. She forced him through a series of increasingly desperate maneuvers, each one revealing his limitations as a combat pilot. When she finally achieved missile lock, the simulated kill was so decisive that even the ground controllers fell silent in amazement. Aggressor 7, you are ordered to return to base immediately. Harrison's voice crackled through the radio, barely containing his rage. Maya responded calmly, Aggressor 7 complying with return orders. As she banked toward Nellie's, she knew that the reckoning was about to begin. Her unauthorized participation had been spectacular, but the consequences would be severe. The landing was smooth, and Maya taxied toward Hangar 7, where Chief Rodriguez and his crew were waiting with expressions of barely concealed pride. As she shut down the engine and climbed out of the cockpit, Maya felt a profound sense of accomplishment. She had proven beyond doubt that gender had nothing to do with piloting ability, and she had done it in the most public way possible. Within minutes, military police arrived to escort Maya to the base commander's office. As she walked across the tarmac, she noticed groups of pilots and ground crew watching her with expressions of respect and admiration. Word of her performance had spread throughout the base, and everyone knew that Aggressor 7 was the female pilot who had been excluded from the exercise. The base commander, General Patricia Williams, was waiting in her office with a mixture of anger and grudging respect. As the highest-ranking female officer on the base, she understood the discrimination Maya had faced while also recognizing the serious breach of protocol that had occurred. Maya stood at attention, prepared to accept full responsibility for her actions. Captain Rodriguez, General Williams began, what you did today was completely unauthorized and potentially dangerous. You violated direct orders and circumvented established protocols. She paused, studying Maya's defiant expression. It was also the most impressive display of tactical flying I've witnessed in 20 years of service. You made our entire training program look like amateur hour. Maya remained silent, knowing that anything she said could be used against her in the inevitable disciplinary proceedings. General Williams continued, Colonel Harrison is demanding your immediate court-martial. He's claiming that your actions undermined military discipline and endangered the exercise participants. The general's expression hardened. However, I've reviewed the exercise recordings and your flying was flawless. More importantly, you've exposed serious deficiencies in our training protocols and leadership standards. The conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. General Williams' aide entered with a tablet displaying news coverage of the exercise. The story of the mysterious aggressor pilot was already spreading through military aviation communities, with experts praising the tactical brilliance demonstrated during the engagements. Social media was buzzing with speculation about the pilot's identity and demands for more information about the exercise. As Maya watched the coverage, she realized that her actions had achieved something far beyond personal revenge. She had created a public relations crisis that would force the military to address its discriminatory practices. The story was too big to suppress, and the implications too significant to ignore. The next morning brought a parade of investigators, reporters, and high-ranking officials to Nellie's Air Force Base. Maya found herself at the center of a media storm that was simultaneously destroying and vindicating her career. The Pentagon had launched a full investigation into the exercise, Colonel Harrison's leadership, and the circumstances that had led to her exclusion. Maya spent hours in debriefing sessions, explaining her actions and motivation to a series of investigators and commanders. She was completely honest about her unauthorized participation, accepting full responsibility while also detailing the discrimination she had faced. Her testimony was corroborated by multiple witnesses, including several male pilots who finally found the courage to speak out against Harrison's behavior. The investigation revealed a pattern of discriminatory practices that extended far beyond Maya's exclusion from the red flag exercise. Multiple female service members came forward with similar stories of harassment, exclusion, and professional sabotage. Colonel Harrison's men only policy was just the tip of an iceberg of systemic discrimination that had been ignored by higher command for years. As the investigation continued, Maya discovered that her unauthorized flight had been recorded by multiple camera systems and radar installations. The footage showed her tactical supremacy in stunning detail, providing irrefutable evidence of her exceptional piloting skills. Military analysts were calling her performance textbook perfect, and using her engagements as examples of superior combat flying. The media attention intensified when retired fighter pilots began speaking out in support of Maya's actions. Several combat veterans publicly stated that they would want her as their wingman in any conflict, and that her exclusion from the exercise was not only discriminatory but tactically stupid. The growing chorus of support from the military aviation community added weight to her case and increased pressure on the Pentagon to address the underlying issues. 3 weeks after the unauthorized flight, Maya received orders to report to the Pentagon for a meeting with the Secretary of the Air Force. As she entered the imposing building, she reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. Her act of defiance had cost her security clearance and possibly her career, but it had also sparked a conversation about equality and merit that was long overdue. The meeting was surprisingly cordial, with the secretary acknowledging both the seriousness of Maya's breach of protocol and the exceptional circumstances that had led to her actions. He informed her that Colonel Harrison had been relieved of command and would face disciplinary action for his discriminatory practices. The red flag exercise protocols were being revised to ensure that all qualified pilots could participate regardless of gender. Maya's punishment was a formal reprimand and temporary grounding, significantly less severe than the court-martial that Harrison had demanded. More importantly, she was being reassigned to a prestigious position at the Air Force Test Pilot School, where her exceptional skills would be used to evaluate new aircraft and tactical systems. The assignment was a clear indication that the military valued her abilities despite her unauthorized actions. As Maya left the Pentagon, she felt a profound sense of vindication. Her risky gambit had not only proven her worth as a pilot, but had also created lasting change in military aviation policies. The red stripe across her canopy had become a symbol of resistance against discrimination, and a reminder that merit should be the only measure of a pilot's worth. The story of Aggressor 7 became legendary in military aviation circles, inspiring a new generation of female pilots to pursue their dreams despite institutional barriers. Maya's unauthorized flight had lasted only 6 hours, but its impact would be felt for decades. She had proven that sometimes the most effective way to fight injustice is to demonstrate superior performance when others least expect it. Years later, as Colonel Maya Rodriguez watched her own students prepare for the red flag exercise, she reflected on the events that had changed her life. The hangar where she had prepared her unauthorized aircraft now housed a display commemorating her achievement, with a replica of the F-16 bearing the famous red stripe. The inscription read, "In memory of all who fought for equality through excellence." The final irony came when Maya learned that her unauthorized flight had been used as a case study in tactical flying courses throughout the military. The same engagement that had nearly ended her career was now being taught to new pilots as an example of superior combat techniques. Her methods had become standard doctrine, proving that innovation often comes from those who refuse to accept the status quo. Maya's story became a testament to the power of individual action in the face of institutional discrimination. She had turned exclusion into opportunity, humiliation into triumph, and prejudice into progress. The red stripe across her canopy had marked her as a target, but it had also identified her as a warrior who refused to be defeated by those who underestimated her abilities. As she watched her students taxi toward the runway, Maya smiled with satisfaction. The red flag exercise was now open to all qualified pilots, regardless of gender, and the military was stronger for it. Her unauthorized flight had lasted only hours, but its legacy would endure as long as pilots took to the skis in defense of freedom and equality. The story of Captain Maya Rodriguez and her legendary flight as Aggressor 7 would be remembered as a turning point in military aviation history. She had proven that sometimes the most effective way to challenge injustice is to demonstrate superior performance when others least expect it. Her red stripe had become a symbol of courage, skill, and the refusal to accept discrimination in any form. In the end, Maya's unauthorized flight had accomplished exactly what she had hoped. It had proven that merit, not gender, should determine a pilot's worth. The F-16s that had once dove to challenge her were now flown by pilots who understood that excellence knows no gender, and that the best aviators are those who earn their wings through skill, determination, and the courage to fight for what is right. Maya's legacy lived on in every female pilot who took to the skis, knowing that the barriers had been broken by someone who refused to accept exclusion and chose, instead, to prove her worth through superior performance. The red stripe across her canopy had marked her as exceptional, and her story would inspire generations of aviators to pursue excellence regardless of the obstacles they might face. The unauthorized flight that had nearly ended Maya's career had instead transformed military aviation and created a more equitable system for all pilots. Her courage in the face of discrimination had sparked changes that would benefit countless future aviators, proving that sometimes the most important battles are won not through following orders, but through the courage to do what is right. Captain Maya Rodriguez had entered the cockpit as an excluded pilot seeking justice, but she had emerged as a legend whose story would inspire military aviators for generations to come. Her red stripe had become a symbol of excellence, courage, and the refusal to accept anything less than equal treatment based on merit alone.